The lie of our life was that we were happy. It was a beautiful lie, curated with the same meticulous care Clara applied to everything, the minimalist decor of our Boston brownstone, the artfully casual drape of her designer scarves, the precise, bright smile she reserved for company photos. We were celebrating that lie tonight, 10 years of it, on the rooftop of a Chicago hotel, so exclusive it felt like we were breathing different air. The city glittered below us, a carpet of diamonds laid at our feet, but all I could feel was the suffocating altitude of our pretense. "I'd trade him in a heartbeat for that tall guy over there," Clara said. She wasn't whispering. The words were a crisp, clear statement of fact, tossed over her shoulder towards her colleagues from the marketing firm. "My name is Elias, and she was talking about me." She pointed a slender, wine-holding hand toward Landon, the firm's new golden boy, whose teeth were as white and perfect as his sales record. I pretended I hadn't heard, swirling the amber whiskey in my glass. The ice clinked, a tiny, frantic sound against the vast, indifferent hum of the city. A 10-year anniversary. It was meant to be a monument to our endurance, but it felt more like a gravestone. "Oh, lighten up, Elias," she said a moment later, nudging my arm when she caught my expression. "It was a joke." But it wasn't. It was the final gleaming piece of a puzzle I had been unconsciously assembling for months. The late nights that smelled of something other than office coffee, the sudden, fervent dedication to a fitness regimen that had carved her into a stranger's silhouette, the endless stream of texts that would make her smile a secret, guarded smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years, and now, this casual, public execution of my worth. I glanced over at her friends. They were failing to conceal their smirks. This wasn't a joke between a husband and wife. It was a performance, and I was the punchline. "I'm going to grab another drink," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. I stood, feeling the weight of the last few years settle in my shoulders, in the slight paunch I'd developed, in the weariness behind my eyes. Her own eyes lit up, not for me, but at the opportunity my absence created. "Landon just got here. Go say hi." "Why would I mind?" I forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "Go on." As she walked away, I watched the transformation. It was a subtle masterpiece of body language. Her posture straightened, her hips swayed with a renewed purpose, and she executed a practiced flip of her dark hair. The Clara approaching him was not the wife who shared my bed. She was a vibrant, predatory creature, and I was the familiar territory she was leaving behind. Landon, all confident charm and tailored suit, met her with a grin that felt far too intimate for a mere colleague. I moved to the bar, a ghost at my own celebration, and ordered another whiskey. From a distance, their interaction was a silent film spelling out the ugly truth. The way her hand lingered on his forearm as she laughed. The way he leaned in, his mouth close to her ear, whispering something that made her blush. They were in their own world, a bubble of shared secrets in the crowded room. "Rough night?" The bartender, a man with tired eyes and a kind face, slid my drink across the polished wood. "You could say that," I murmured, my gaze locked on the two of them. "Anniversary, right? Heard you at check-in." He wiped the counter with a clean cloth. 10 years. 10 years, I confirmed, the words tasting like ash. He nodded towards Clara and Landon. "Doesn't look like 10 happy ones." His directness was startling, but strangely welcome. It was real. "What would you do?" I asked, turning to face him, the question spilling out of me before I could stop it. "If you found out your wife was cheating?" He paused his work, his expression thoughtful. "Depends. First time it happened to me, I went nuclear. Screaming match, broke a lamp, said things I can't take back. Didn't change a thing, except it made me the villain in everyone's story." He leaned in a little. "Second time with my second wife, I was smarter. Gathered evidence, protected my assets, planned my exit. A lot less satisfying in the moment, but a hell of a lot better in the long run." His words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Smarter. Planned my exit. It was a blueprint. A way out of the fog of humiliation. "Thanks," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Just an observation from a man who's been there," he said, moving down the bar to another customer. I turned back just in time to see one of Clara's colleagues, Ainsley, approaching me. She had always been kind, one of the few who looked at me like a person, not just Clara's quiet, unimpressive husband. "Hey, Elias," she said, sliding onto the stool beside me. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all." She ordered a club soda and then turned to me, her expression pained. "I'm sorry about, you know." She gave a discreet nod toward the new couple. It's been going on for a while. A few of us thought you should know, but, well, nobody wants to be the one. My stomach coiled into a tight, cold knot. How long is a while? Ainsley hesitated. At least 6 months that I know of. It got really obvious around the office Christmas party. 6 months. The Christmas party I'd missed because I was home with a nasty flu. It all clicked into place now. The sudden chill that had descended on our marriage right after the holidays. The constant criticism, the comparisons to her more dynamic colleagues. Thank you for telling me, Ainsley, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I appreciate the honesty. She seemed relieved. You deserve better, Elias. Clara's different now. She glanced over her shoulder. I should go before she sees me talking to you. As she left, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't a dramatic confrontation waiting to happen. There would be no tearful pleas, no broken lamps. This would be a demolition. Precise, patient, and planned. I finished my drink and stood up to leave. As I passed their table, I overheard Landon ask, "Is your husband leaving?" Clara glanced up, her face a mask of mild surprise. "Elias, you're heading out?" "Back to the room," I said evenly. "Early meeting tomorrow. Don't let me rush you." "Oh." The relief in her voice was unmistakable. "Okay, I might stay a bit longer then." "Take your time." I gave them both a cordial nod and walked away. In the elevator, my reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, a defeated man with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. But as I watched, something shifted. I straightened my spine. A small, almost imperceptible change, but it was everything. Tonight was the last night I would be anyone's fool. Back in the suite, overlooking the glittering, indifferent city, I didn't turn on the lights. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ainsley. "Thought you might want to see this." Attached was a photo, taken just moments ago. Clara and Landon, tucked away in a dark corner of the bar, locked in a kiss that left no room for interpretation. I saved the image to a secure folder. Then, I opened my banking app. With a few taps, I transferred half of our joint savings into my personal account. It wasn't about the money. It was about drawing the first line in the sand. It was the first act of a man taking his life back. The man who checked out of that Chicago hotel the next morning was not the same one who had checked in. The fog of hurt and confusion had burned away, leaving behind the cold, clear architecture of a plan. Clara was still asleep, oblivious, when I left a brief note about my early meeting and caught the first flight back to Boston. On the plane, I didn't watch a movie or read a book. I opened the Notes app on my phone and began to build the framework of my new reality. My first call was to Garrett. We'd been roommates in college, two ambitious kids trying to figure out the world. I'd gone into strategic finance. He'd taken a more unpredictable path and was now one of the most sought-after private investigators in the state. "Elias? Man, it's been ages," he said, his voice a familiar, grounding baritone. "It has, Garrett. I need your help. It's not a social call." I explained the situation with a brutal, dispassionate efficiency that surprised even myself. He listened without interruption, the silence on his end a testament to his professionalism. "I can help," he said finally, "but you need to be sure. Once you start digging, you can't unknow what you find." "I'm sure," I replied, the certainty absolute. "I want everything. Phone records, surveillance, financial trails, everything. You'll have it." My next appointment was with Evelyn Reed, a divorce attorney whose name was always spoken with a mixture of fear and reverence. I had rescheduled our meeting for that very afternoon. She was a sharp, impeccably dressed woman in her 50s, with eyes that seemed to see right through the carefully constructed calm I was projecting. "Things have accelerated, I take it," she said, gesturing for me to sit. I laid out what I knew, what Ainsley had told me, and the photograph. I told her about the bartender's advice. She listened, her pen scratching against a legal pad. "You did well to transfer those funds," she noted. "It's a defensive first move. But now we build the offense. Your wife has a high-paying job, but you mentioned the brownstone was purchased primarily with your inheritance. We need to establish that as separate property. I want original bank statements, deeds, renovation, invoices, anything that proves your family's money bought that house." I left her office armed with a checklist and a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about ending a marriage anymore. It was about dismantling a lie and reclaiming what was rightfully mine. That evening, back in the silent, empty brownstone, I became an archaeologist of my own life, digging through the ruins of my marriage. Clara had always been careless with passwords, cycling through the same few combinations of pet names and birth dates. It took me less than 5 minutes to gain access to her entire digital world. What I found was a betrayal so profound, it almost defied comprehension. It wasn't just Landon. The emails and messages went back 6 months, not 3, filled with shared fantasies and scathing critiques of me. But there was more. I uncovered a secret credit card. Its statements, a roadmap of their affair. Boutique hotels in the city, lavish dinners I was never invited to, lingerie I had never seen. The financial deception was a separate, colder layer of treason. She had been systematically siphoning money from our joint accounts for over a year, creating a nest egg for her new life. But the deepest cut, the one that made my blood run cold, was the discovery of a home equity line of credit taken out against our house, my house, 6 months ago. She had forged my signature. The paperwork was right there in a scanned folder in her cloud storage, my name clumsily replicated in her handwriting. And then there were the messages with her friends. Elias is such a pushover, she'd written to her best friend Diane. He won't even fight for himself, let alone fight me in court. I almost feel bad for how easy this is going to be. The words didn't enrage me, they galvanized me. They erased any lingering doubt, any whisper of sentimentality. I methodically screenshotted, downloaded, and saved everything to an encrypted hard drive, creating a digital dossier of her deceit. Each file was a brick in the fortress I was building around myself. I was no longer the pushover. I was the architect of her undoing, using the very tools of her betrayal against her. I was building my case in the quiet heart of the home she thought she controlled, a silent, methodical ghost preparing for the final reckoning. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in deception. My life split into two distinct, parallel realities. On one front, I was Elias, the devoted, if somewhat distracted husband. On the other, I was Elias, the meticulous strategist preparing for war. The public front was a stage, and I played my part to perfection. When Clara came home late, smelling of expensive wine and a cologne that wasn't mine, I would feign concern. "Long day at the office?" I'd ask, looking up from my laptop. "You have no idea," she'd sigh, dropping her briefcase. "This West Ridge account is killing me." I knew from her deleted emails that the West Ridge account was Landon's project, and their work sessions were usually held at a hotel near his apartment. I would just nod sympathetically. "Well, make sure you're taking care of yourself." Each lie she told, I cataloged. Each hollow endearment she offered, I noted. I was a passive observer in the theater of my own life, watching the final act play out. Meanwhile, the secret front was where I was truly living. My mornings started not with coffee, but with a grueling workout at a gym across town. The first 2 weeks were hell, my body protesting years of neglect. But with each pound I shed, I felt a layer of weakness and self-pity sloughing off with it. I lost 15 pounds in the first month. My old suits started to hang off my frame, so I bought new ones sharper, better fitting, the kind of clothes the man I was becoming would wear. My renewed focus extended to my career. I stopped coasting and threw myself into my work with a ferocity that startled my colleagues. I put my name in for a promotion to director, a move I had hesitated on for years, partly due to Clara's subtle discouragement that I should be content where I was. 2 weeks later, I got it. The raise was substantial. I told her over a quiet dinner at home. "That's great, Elias," she said, the surprise in her eyes quickly masked by a strained smile. She was struggling to sound enthusiastic. "I didn't even know you were up for that." There's a lot you don't know about me these days," I replied, offering a placid smile that didn't reach my eyes. I saw a flicker of something in her expression, then not suspicion, but a momentary, uncomfortable reassessment. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. The evidence continued to pile up, each new piece of fresh horror. Garrett's reports were ruthlessly detailed. He confirmed the secret apartment Clara had rented 6 months prior, a small studio across town paid for in cash, withdrawn from our joint account. But his surveillance photos revealed a shocking new dimension. It wasn't just Landon she was meeting there. "Her dance card is pretty full," Garrett commented dryly during one of our weekly check-ins. He slid a set of glossy 8x10 seconds across the table. In them, Clara was with another man. Taller than Landon, older, with an air of wealth and power. Name's Preston Vance. He's a senior partner at one of her firm's biggest clients. Married, 3 kids, lives in Beacon Hill. His wife is Genevieve Vance, old money, sits on half a dozen charity boards. I stared at the photos. Clara, laughing with this man, her hand on his chest. It wasn't a crime of passion with a single person. This was a lifestyle, a pattern of calculated opportunism. She was leveraging our marriage, my stability, to build a network of affairs. I want you to look into him too, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I want the complete picture. The man Clara thought she was married to was disappearing, replaced by someone colder, harder, and infinitely more patient. She was so engrossed in her own deceptions that she never noticed the stranger sleeping beside her, the silent architect who was drawing up the blueprints for her downfall, while she dreamt of other men. The perfect opportunity presented itself on a Tuesday evening in late spring. Clara came home flushed with excitement, tossing her purse onto the kitchen island. Good news, she announced. The firm is sending me to New York this weekend to close the final details on the Apex deal. It's a huge win. My heart began to beat a steady, deliberate rhythm. I knew from her synced calendar, which she'd foolishly never unlinked from my devices, that the Apex deal was a fabrication. She and Landon had booked a suite at the Plaza for 2 nights. The charge, I had already noted with grim satisfaction, had been placed on my supplementary credit card. I looked up from the financial reports I was reviewing, arranging my face into a mask of thoughtful disappointment. This weekend? That's a shame. I was hoping we could finally have some time together. I paused, letting the idea form. Actually, what if I came with you? I could work from my company's New York office on Friday. We could make a weekend of it, have a nice dinner, see a show. The panic that flashed in her eyes was a beautiful, terrible thing to behold. It was there for only a second before she smothered it with a look of regret. Oh, Elias, I don't think that's a good idea. It's going to be wall-to-wall meetings, working dinners, early breakfasts. I'd be terrible company. I don't mind, I pressed gently. I can entertain myself. It would just be nice to be in the same city. End of fray. Honestly, I really need to focus on this, she said, her tone firming into the one she used when a decision was final. Another time, okay? I promise. She softened, trying to manage my supposed disappointment. When this project is over, we'll plan something special. Just us. I'd like that, I lied, returning to my work. The trap was set. The next morning, after she left, I initiated the next phase. My first call was to Ainsley. I need a favor, I said, keeping my voice low. Something discreet. Name it, she replied without hesitation. I need copies of Clara's expense reports for the last 6 months, and any internal documentation about this Apex deal trip to New York. An hour later, the files were in my secure inbox. They confirmed everything. Clara had been falsifying reports for months, billing the company for her trysts with Landon. The New York trip was the most audacious lie of all, with a fake client meeting listed and a budget approved for a standard business hotel, not the 5-star luxury of the Plaza. My next step was bolder. It felt like moving a queen across the chessboard. I arranged a meeting with Genevieve Vance. We met at a quiet, discreet cafe, she suggested. She was exactly as Garrett's file described her, poised, elegant, with an intelligence in her eyes that was as sharp as her designer suit. I apologize for the mysterious invitation, Mrs. Vance, I began. My name is Elias Thorne. I believe our spouses are involved with one another. I didn't present it as an accusation. I presented it as a fact, sliding a small, curated selection of Garrett's photos and a few key anonymous text messages across the table. I had chosen the evidence carefully enough to be undeniable, but not so graphic as to be needlessly humiliating. She examined them in absolute silence, her expression unreadable. Not a flicker of shock or grief crossed her face. When she finally looked up, her eyes were like chips of ice. How long have you known? She asked, her voice perfectly controlled. About my wife's activities in general? For some time. About your husband specifically? A few weeks. And what is it you want from me, Mr. Thorne? Nothing but awareness, I said honestly. What you do with this information is your decision. I just believed you had a right to know. She nodded slowly, a silent acknowledgement of our shared, grim reality. I appreciate that. She gathered the photos. May I keep these? Of course. As we prepared to leave, she paused. What are you planning to do about your wife? I'm handling it, I said simply. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Good. They deserve what's coming. She looked at me then, a formidable ally I hadn't anticipated. Well, Mr. Thorne, I suspect both our spouses are about to experience some significant life changes. Good luck with yours. And to you, I replied. That Friday, as Clara checked into the plaza with Landon, I made one final call. It was to the fraud prevention department of my credit card company. I reported my card as potentially compromised, noting a highly suspicious charge at a New York hotel I had not authorized. They placed an immediate hold on the account. The first domino had been pushed. All I had to do now was sit back and listen for the sound of them falling. The first call came on Saturday morning, just as I was finishing my coffee. It was Clara, her voice a low, furious tremor. "Did you cancel our credit cards?" she snapped, foregoing any greeting. "Good morning to you too," I replied, my tone deliberately calm and unconcerned. "No, of course not. Why?" "The hotel just called the room. They said there's a problem with the card I used for the reservation, and my personal cards are being declined too." "That's bizarre," I said, feigning confusion. "Mine is working fine. I just bought this coffee with it." A small, satisfying lie. "Where are you staying?" "Maybe there's a problem with their system. I can try to wire you some cash if you're stuck." There was a pregnant pause on the other end. "I'm at the plaza." "The plaza?" I infused my voice with surprise. "Wow. I thought the company usually put you up at the Marriott for these things. They're really rolling out the red carpet for this Apex deal." Another, longer pause. The sound of gears grinding in her head. There was a last-minute change of plans. "I see. Well, how much do you need to get through the weekend?" "The room is nearly $1,000 a night, plus incidentals," she said through clenched teeth. I let out a low whistle. "That's quite a business expense. Is the company reimbursing all of that?" "Elias, can you just help me or not?" Her patience was gone. "Of course, honey. Let me call the bank and see what's going on. I'll call you right back." I hung up and allowed myself a small, grim smile. Phase 1 was complete. She was off balance, financially stranded, and trapped in a lie that was becoming more complicated by the minute. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. But it wasn't Clara, it was an unfamiliar number. "Is this Elias Thorne?" a formal male voice asked. "Speaking." "Mr. Thorne, this is Richard Davis, Vice President of Human Resources at Meridian Marketing. We need to discuss an urgent matter regarding your wife, Clara Thorne." "Is everything okay?" I asked, playing the part of the concerned husband. "No, Mr. Thorne, it is not. We've received some very disturbing, anonymous information regarding potential misconduct involving your wife and another senior employee, Landon Shaw. We're launching an internal investigation, but I felt it was important to speak with you directly." "Misconduct?" I said, my voice laced with practiced disbelief. "I don't understand." "I'd rather not discuss the specifics over the phone. Would you be available to meet at our offices on Monday morning?" "Absolutely," I said. 9 o'clock? We confirmed the time and I hung up, my heart hammering with a cold, triumphant beat. The second domino had fallen, faster than I could have hoped. Genevieve Vance was, indeed, a formidable woman. Clara called back shortly after, her voice audibly relieved. "The hotel figured it out. Some sort of system glitch. False alarm." "Oh, that's great news. Are you having a nice time?" "It's fine, busy," she said curtly. "Listen, I might have to stay an extra day. The meetings are running long." "Whatever you need," I said agreeably. "Oh, by the way, that's funny, someone from your HR department just called me. Richard something. He wanted me to come in for a meeting on Monday." The silence that followed was absolute. It stretched for so long I could hear the faint static on the line. "Clara, are you there?" "What? What did he want?" Her voice had dropped to a terrified whisper. "He didn't say exactly. Something about an internal investigation. It sounded pretty serious." I paused for effect. Did he mention anyone else's name?" "No," I lied smoothly. "Just yours. Is everything okay at work?" "I have to go," she said abruptly, and the line went dead. She didn't call back, but thanks to the cloning software Garrett had helped me install on her laptop, I didn't need her to. I watched their panicked text exchange unfold in real time. They were spiraling, a frantic flurry of accusations and fear. How did they find out? Who told them? Was it your wife? Did you tell someone? The trust between them, built on a foundation of lies, was crumbling into dust. Within the hour, Garrett's surveillance confirmed they had checked out of the plaza. They took separate, hastily booked flights back to Boston. The romantic getaway had become a desperate retreat. The storm had broken, and they were both running for cover, not realizing that the architect of the storm was waiting for them at home. Monday morning arrived with a cool gray stillness that felt fitting. Clara had been a ghost in the house since her return, moving with a tense silence, her face pale and drawn. She left early, undoubtedly to coordinate a story with Landon before their meeting. I let her go. Their frantic plotting was irrelevant. I arrived at the Meridian marketing offices at 10 minutes to 9. The receptionist led me to a large conference room with a sweeping view of the harbor. Richard Davis and a stern-faced woman he introduced as Patricia Miller, the company's chief legal officer, were waiting for me. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for your discretion," Richard began. "Before your wife and Mr. Shaw arrive, we wanted to get your perspective. The information we received alleges a long-term inappropriate relationship, falsification of expense reports, and significant misuse of company resources. Were you aware of any of this?" I summoned every ounce of my acting ability, letting my face fall into an expression of bewildered devastation. "An affair? No, I had no idea. She told me these were business trips. Are you saying they weren't?" "Many of them were not," Patricia confirmed, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. I opened it. Inside were hotel receipts, text message transcripts, copies of the falsified expense reports Ainsley had sent me, and even a few of the photos I had given Genevieve Vance. I flipped through the pages, pretending to see them for the first time. I don't know what to say." "We understand this is a shock," Richard said sympathetically. He and Patricia exchanged a look. They had clearly decided I was the wrong party, the clueless victim. "We need to ask, Mr. Thorne, did you send this package to us?" I looked up, meeting his gaze with wide, innocent eyes. "Me? God, no. I had no idea about any of this until you called." A knock at the door signaled their arrival. "Are you comfortable staying for this, Mr. Thorne?" Patricia asked. "I think I need to," I said, my voice firm. "I need to hear what they have to say." Clara walked in first. She froze when she saw me, her face draining of all color. Landon followed, looking like he was about to be physically ill. "What is he doing here?" Clara demanded, pointing a trembling finger at me. "I invited him," Richard said calmly. "Please, sit down." They took their seats opposite me, a tangible wall of dread between us. Patricia began, laying out the allegations with clinical precision. "That's ridiculous," Clara said, her voice shaking despite her attempt at defiance. "Who made these accusations?" "The source is anonymous," Richard replied, "but the evidence, as you can see, speaks for itself." "This is a misunderstanding," Landon stammered. "Clara and I have been working closely on the West Ridge account, that's all." It was my moment. I spoke for the first time, my voice quiet, but carrying across the silent room. "At the Plaza Hotel? This past weekend?" Clara's head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and betrayal. "You knew." "Oh, I suspected," I corrected gently. "I confirmed it when you called me about the credit card." "You canceled our cards deliberately," she accused. "I simply placed a fraud alert on my account when I saw a charge I didn't recognize," I said, looking at Richard and Patricia. "I was just trying to be responsible." Richard cleared his throat, bringing the meeting back on track. "Miss Thorne, Mr. Shaw," Patricia said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "I'm afraid I have to inform you that your employment with Meridian Marketing is terminated, effective immediately. The evidence of financial misconduct is irrefutable." "You can't do this," Clara protested. "I've given 8 years to this company." "And we appreciate your past contributions," Richard said. "But these actions leave us no choice. Security will escort you to your desks to collect your personal belongings." End of 4. Landon slumped in his chair, utterly defeated. But Clara's fight wasn't over. She turned her venom on me. "This is your doing, isn't it? You set us up." I met her furious gaze without flinching. "I didn't make you have an affair, Clara. I didn't make you lie and steal from your company. Those were your choices, all of them." As I stood to leave them to the corporate fallout, she called after me, "This isn't over, Elias." I turned at the door, a faint, cold smile on my lips. "Actually, Clara, Island, I'll see you at home. We have a lot to discuss." The ride back to the brownstone was a silent, suffocating ordeal. Once inside, she went straight for the wine, downing a glass before turning to face me, her eyes wild. "Go on," she spat. "Tell me how you orchestrated all of this. Get it off your chest." "I didn't orchestrate anything," I said calmly, sitting in my usual armchair. "I just stopped looking the other way. I know about Landon. I know about Preston Vance. I know about the secret apartment and the home equity line of credit you took out by forging my signature. Her face went from red to white with each revelation. She sank into the sofa opposite me. How? And I know about this. I pulled out my phone and played the recording Garrett had captured from a bug in our living room 2 weeks prior. Her own voice filled the space between us, cold and confident. Once you're free of Genevieve and I've secured my share from Elias, we can finally be together. He's clueless. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was absolute. That's illegal, she whispered, her voice hoarse. In Massachusetts, only one party needs to consent to a recording in their own home, I said, echoing the words of my lawyer. It's perfectly admissible. I pulled a thick folder from my briefcase and placed it on the coffee table. So here are your options. Option 1. We fight this out in court. It will be ugly, public, and expensive, and you will lose. Option 2. We handle this through mediation. You return the money you've taken, we sell the house and split the remaining assets equitably, and we move on. No public accusations. No more fighting. She stared at the folder, then at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You've changed. Inset. I've woken up, I corrected her. The man you thought was a pushover is gone. She collapsed back into the chair, the fight draining out of her, replaced by the crushing weight of her reality. I hate you, she sobbed. No, you don't, I said, standing up. You hate that I wasn't who you thought I was. You hate that you miscalculated. I walked to the hall and picked up the overnight bag I had packed that morning. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. I'll be staying at a hotel. And at the door, I paused. For what it's worth, Clara, I really did love you. She didn't look up. I closed the door behind me, the sound of her quiet sobs the final, mournful note in the 10-year symphony of our marriage. The text from Clara arrived the next morning, as expected. Option 2. I'll call a mediator today. The efficiency of our divorce was almost anticlimactic. Faced with the mountain of evidence I had compiled, Clara was cooperative, almost docile. She returned the diverted funds, agreed to my terms on the division of assets, and signed every document without protest. The fight was over before it had even begun. The only complication came from her parents, who had always viewed me as a temporary fixture, a man not quite worthy of their brilliant daughter. They blustered and threatened during one tense meeting, accusing me of taking advantage of her. To my surprise, it was Clara who shut them down. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Elias is being more than fair. I made mistakes. This is the right way forward. It was the first honest thing I had heard her say in years. The house sold in less than a month, fetching a price that gave us both a significant sum to start over. I heard through the grapevine that Clara, ironically, had moved to Chicago to try and rebuild her career away from the ashes of her reputation in Boston. Landon, after a period of intense couples therapy, had apparently reconciled with his wife. Preston Vance was not so lucky. Genevieve's family connections were as deep and unforgiving as her husband's betrayal. He lost his marriage, his executive position, and his standing in Boston society. The last I heard, he had relocated to the West Coast, a pariah in his own city. As for me, I didn't stay in Boston. The brownstone, the streets, the memories, they were all part of a life that no longer belonged to me. I took my share of the proceeds and invested in a small, promising tech startup that I had been advising. 6 months later, they offered me the full-time position of CFO, complete with equity. I accepted and moved to their headquarters in New York City. My new apartment in Brooklyn was smaller than the brownstone, but it was mine. It overlooked the East River, and every morning the sun would rise over the bridges, a daily promise of a new beginning. The city's energy was a perfect antidote to the stagnation I had lived in for so long. I continued with therapy, untangling the knots of self-doubt and neglect that had allowed me to be so blind for so long. I kept up my gym routine, finding a sense of peace in the physical exertion. Slowly, I began to rebuild my social life, reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. Ainsley and I stayed in touch. She had left Meridian Marketing shortly after the scandal, disgusted with the corporate culture that had allowed it to fester. She took a better position at a rival agency, and, when she came to New York for a conference, we met for dinner. You look great, Elias, she said, smiling at me from across the table. Happier? I am, I admitted. It's been a long road, but a necessary one. Any regrets? I considered it for a moment. About ending the marriage? None. About not seeing the truth sooner? Maybe. But I've made peace with it. It made me who I am now. Good, she said softly. You deserve that peace. Our dinner stretched into a long walk along the Brooklyn waterfront. There was an easy, unspoken understanding between us. We agreed to take things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from the past, but the foundation was solid, built on honesty and mutual respect. A year after the divorce was finalized, an email from an unfamiliar address appeared in my inbox. The subject line was simply, Elias. It was from Clara. I saw your company in the business news. Congratulations on the funding round. You deserve the success. For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry. I stared at the words for a long time. The anger and hurt I once felt were gone, replaced by a quiet, distant pity. I considered not responding, but eventually, I typed back. Thank you, Clara. I hope you're finding your way too. Her reply was almost instantaneous. Still working on it. Turns out the grass isn't always greener. Be well, Elias. I didn't write back. There was nothing more to say. That night, I stood on my balcony, a glass of whiskey in my hand, the ice clinking softly. 18 months ago, I was a man whose wife had casually offered to trade him in like a used car. That man was gone, erased, and rebuilt from the ground up. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and more content than he had ever thought possible. I thought about the woman in the rooftop bar and her careless, cruel words that had shattered my world. I realized then that she hadn't destroyed me. She had liberated me. Her betrayal was the violent, necessary catalyst for my own evolution. I raised my glass, not to her downfall or to my success, but to the brutal, beautiful journey that had led me here. Some might call what I did an epic revenge. I prefer to think of it as an epic reclamation. I had taken back my life, piece by painful piece, and built something better on the solid ground of the ruins. And for the first time in a very long time, I was truly, completely, and unapologetically happy.